And those of us who believe it are pleading with you.
And those of us who believe it are pleading with you.
That transforming enterprises becomes part of the agenda for social change that you are putting on the forefront of America's consciousness. The whole world is watching what is going on here. Where before, eyes were focused on Athens, or Madrid, or Rome, or Paris. Now, the issue has come home to where this economic crisis began. Everything is changing because of what you are doing. So on behalf of enormous numbers of people, thank you.
So we have some time for questions. Does anybody have a question?
What you were saying about transforming the workplace, economies of scale, labor arbitrage, how do you get around it, and can you at this point get around it, and what sectors would you think would be easy enough to get around it?
The question is basically, how could a cooperative way of producing goods and services handle the problem that some things are best made in huge enterprises. What economists call economies of scale. Here is my answer. We have a choice to make between producing huge quantities of stuff and having a democratic, honorable, equal society. There never was a vote. There never was a public discussion where the American people could choose between having smaller, more cooperative enterprises as opposed to mega corporations. We have the power to force a decision for the first time. But it means confronting capitalism. They wanted the big corporations. Because they got the big profits. We got horrific jobs. We have to reopen the question of how we want to work. How we want that major part of all of our lives to be organized. That's just as important of filling our living spaces with three times the appliances that we can ever use. A rational society would ask for public discussion and democratic decision about how we work. Capitalism never offered us that right.
never offered us that right.
One more reason
One more reason
to say goodbye to that system.
to say goodbye to that system.
Thank you for what you achieved,
Thank you for what you achieved,
but the United States
but the United States
can now do better
can now do better
than capitalism.
than capitalism.
I'm a medical device entrepreneur. I've started a company to make a medical device that can potentially treat a lot of people with asthma and other diseases and be life-saving. I want to hire people and grow my business. In your model, whatever, I forget what you dubbed it, but in your model, who's supposed to design my device and tell me how many I'm supposed to make and how best to distribute it? Who exactly?
Question was, if you're a developer of new medical devices that can help people, but you need money to go into production, hire people, how would that get worked out? Who decides all of these questions? The best answer is to show you how it's done now. If you are such an entrepreneur, you have to go to a private banker. And beg on your knees for a loan. Or you go to a stockbroker and beg them to do what's called an initial public offering of shares. You are then the prisoner of the shareholders and the bankers. That's the system that is breaking down around us. The government. And in the greatest irony, the government which is funding and sustaining them is using your money to do it. Shame on them for doing it. Shame on us for permitting it. That's what you're changing.
Do we have any more questions?
Question is, do I advocate a national strike? I certainly dream about it. And I'm very impressed. What has been accomplished by the general national strikes in Greece, in Italy, in France, in Spain, in Ireland, and many other countries. That was a weapon that let governments know across Europe that they could not impose on their people the austerity that is their way of trying to make the average person pay for the collapse of capitalism as a system. And the governments there trying to impose austerity are being defeated by mass action. Let me give you some examples. 2 weeks ago, in the little country of Denmark, something called the Red Bloc. Socialist, anti-capitalist parties, Green parties, swept into power, making for the first time in Denmark's history a woman prime minister. The leader. Second example. 10 days ago, in the country of France, which has a Senate, which has been governed by conservatives since 1958. The conservatives, led by Sarkozy, their leader, was defeated. Socialists and communists will enter and take over the Senate come the first of the year. Third example. I won't give you more examples, just one more. Germany. The largest economy of Europe. There, the Prime Minister, Angela Merkel by name, has lost the last 3 regional elections. Like Sarkozy, she is getting poll numbers like George Bush in the last months of his disaster. The mass action of the German working class is defeating Angela Merkel. A combination of working class parties and a powerful Green Party in Germany forced Mrs. Merkel during the summer to make an historic about-face. For years, she had been a champion of nuclear energy as the basis for Germany's power. In August of this year, facing catastrophic election losses, Merkel went on German television and made an absolute commitment to shut down every nuclear power reactor in Germany. And that is now underway. Mass action. General strikes. Achieved those victories. Every country and every movement has to find its way, its tools, its program. You are working on that. It's not for me. Or our brothers and sisters in Europe to make our strategy. But I am convinced that we will need to find comparable ways to turn this country around.
To turn this country around.
From aristocracy to democracy, what would you say about the historical legacy of communism and how this fits in?
The question was about the historical legacy of communism, feudalism that went before. In the Soviet Union, major changes were made. Property was taken from private owners and made into state property. Markets were repressed and planning was substituted. What they did not change was how the production enterprise was organized. In the daily life of Russian workers, they continued to come to work 9 to 5, then go home. The basic decisions, what to produce, how to produce, and what to do with the profits, were made by a corps of state officials. They were supposed to make those decisions in the interests of everybody. That didn't work out. We have to learn from that. Not to throw out everything they did. That would be stupid. We have to criticize where they went wrong. And take some different direction. That's why I stress changing the base of society. Not putting our faith in a government alone. But making sure any government depends on the mass of the people at the base. And the only way that I can see making that happen is if the mass of people take control, own, operate, and make the decisions about the production of the goods and services a society depends on. That's the lesson I take from a failed experiment that also has drama, achievements, a level of equality, and other lessons. We would be crazy not to learn also. And if we get called names because we don't dismiss these revolutions, we should have the courage to say we will not be ideological pawns. We will take lessons from wherever they will help us do better than capitalism.